This question has two parts. And my kids are so loud. All right. But the first one is how to deal with personal discouragement. And then the second one is how do you help a friend who's dealing with discouragement? I asked my husband, he is so wise and very clear in how he thinks. Unlike me, where I'm like layers, like an onion. And he said that when he finds himself discouraged, it's usually because subconsciously he has placed his hope and trust in the wrong thing. You know, you don't even realize how wrapped up you get in a thought process, and you stop trusting in something other than God's will and God's word and His promises. And here are some for instances. One thing that's going on right now is that so many people, you know, if your candidate doesn't get elected, then you get discouraged, because if your candidate doesn't get elected, then your hope is gone, and you have placed your hope in that candidate for whatever outcome it is you're hoping to control in some way. Also that, you know, maybe if such and such and such and such and such and such happens, then the candidate will be in office. And but then when those outcomes don't happen, we lose hope because we hoped in man rather than God. Let's see if I can kind of tilt this a little bit. I feel like it's crooked. Another scenario is, well, if I get married, then, and our hope becomes in our spouse or that life identity as a spouse and the purpose of what you would do in life. And so your hope becomes in being a homemaker or a keeper at home, rather than your hope being in being a godly woman who's surrendered to the Lord. And so what happens is when our hope is in a spouse, we start trying to find ways to control the situation. I can meet Mr. Right if I do such and such. And when you do such and such and it doesn't work out, you've lost what you thought was control. And you've lost the control of an outcome. And so you get discouraged because the outcome that you were hoping for isn't there. Another one is, if only my husband would change, then. So your hope for happiness is wrapped up in your husband changing. And so you'll read all of these marriage books and think, well, if I do this and I do this and I do this, then they say he'll do that. And it doesn't work. Somebody said the other day, oh, so they would be teasing, oh, you have a message preaching. And I was like, no, but if I did, it would be preaching to women, not men, because of all that whole verse and everything. And they said, well, you know, what's the deal with that? Because men are the problem. And I thought, actually, no, I am the problem. And I don't necessarily mean me personally. I mean, whoever is in the situation, they're the one that has to deal with themselves. And that is where this issue of discouragement comes in, because we get so wrapped up in our circumstances that we want control. And control, or surrendering control, is where that battle of discouragement comes in. Another one is that if I had children, if I did such and such and such and such, and then I could have children. And again, it goes back to our hope is in some identity that is outside of our control, and then we put our hope in steps or a formula or something for this success of the outcome that we want, and our hope is misplaced. So what I would do is, when you're discouraged, find where your hope was placed, in what outcome. So if you can find what outcome you were desiring, and then what you have thought would make that happen, which is causing this discouragement. I think weight loss, boy, that's a big one. If I do follow A, B, C, I'll lose weight, and then we just get discouraged. So what I would do is, identify the root of what you're trying to manufacture. What is the outcome you are trying to manipulate to cause it to happen, or hope or pray that all of this will work together and so the success will be there. And then surrender that outcome to God. And I call this surrendering your happiness for the desires of your heart, because we truly don't know what will make us happy, except for the fact that we know that happy is the man that trusteth the Lord. And delight thyself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. So you have to, that verse says, lean not unto thine own understanding. Once we surrender our own understanding at the altar of God's will, I look at Jesus, who prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed what he really, really wanted. And in the end, he just said, but if not, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we're not quick even to think about this answer. If we're going to go to the fire, and God'll help us, but if not, their hope was not bound in the idea that God would save them from that fire. If not, so I would surrender. I would really work on surrendering to accepting your greatest fears and figure out how to serve God in the darkest scenario. For me, I put recently that I've been afraid of a communism society and how they rip apart families and people go to prison and there's torture. And then I realized, people have walked before and gone through that and come out with joy. And Corrie ten Boom, she said, when Jesus is with you, even in the worst of times, the best remains. And Job said, the thing that I have feared has come upon me. So then what? What if God's will for his glory through your life is the worst of times? I think about the book Hope Heals and how this lady had a massive stroke and is paralyzed. What if the worst that you can imagine happens? Are you surrendered? Are you surrendered to his will? Are you surrendered to being a godly woman, no matter what that looks like? So I think that for us, to how we deal with our own discouragement is through surrender and replacing our hope in the right places.